居然有人比 Johnny Depp 还要惨 Is this woman telling the truth? Or is she Amber Heard 2.0?
My dog stepped on a bee.
Who
is the real victim?
What is the truth?
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Everyone knows the story of Johnny Depp. My man was on top of the world till he lost everything. Even now, I think he only has like, what, a perfume contract? He's selling perfume. And he's like one movie on IMDb, yo. He still hasn't fully recovered. But how that all started was he was happily married to Amber Heard for a while, and then it all slowly went downhill into chaos. But today's guy is totally different. He met a girl once, and just like that, he lost everything. Even now, he still can't even continue his career in the United States, yo. He's gotta go to Kauai. So that brings us to today's guy, Major League Baseball player Trevor Bauer, who back in 2021 signed a $51 million contract. And everybody knows when it comes to professional athletes, there are fans who want to meet and do extra things with them. And in the baseball community, they actually call these fans cleat chasers. What they do is they wait in the stands and say,
Hey, can I get your autograph?
And then they shoot their shot. Sometimes it might be to slide into the DMs or it might be face to face. And this is what happened whenever Trevor accepted an invitation from a fan to go on a date. We all know when it comes to situations like this, a date ultimately turns into intimate relations.
Naughty.
2 weeks after that, the fan came out and accused Trevor of sexual assault. So after these accusations, my man Trevor couldn't play no more, but he still broke a baseball record, yo, for the longest suspension in MLB history. So for 2 years, he could not play, he could not work, he could not make money. Even with Johnny Depp, he was still working for Disney for a little while until it got he still had his band, he still had his music, he still had his albums. Trevor had nothing. The only thing he had was time to go to court day in and day out and defend his name, defend for his innocence, fight for his freedom, until just 2 weeks ago, the case was suddenly dropped. Trevor agreed not to sue her, and she agreed not to sue him, and there was zero money. Nobody got paid. So at this point, the internet is wondering, wait, what? Such a huge case, and if these accusations are so strong and they have so much evidence, why wouldn't they go to trial? What would be the reason? At this point, Trevor pulled out the ultimate Uno reverse card receipts, son. And when he showed these receipts, the whole internet was like, oh snap, he's got proof. So at this point, the internet was giving the girl a lot of pressure. You need to come out, you need to speak your truth. And then a famous interviewer actually called this girl and said, hey, I'm gonna give you a chance to tell your side of the story.
I want to read some of these texts from you to a friend between the two of you before you met Trevor, this one. Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. Victim is an interesting choice of words. I'm going to allow you a chance to explain yourself. But after you agreed to meet, you asked your friend what you should steal. Your friend answered his money. He says, another one from you to a friend, I'm going to his house Wednesday. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll.
So at this point, the interviewer is presenting some of the receipts that Trevor actually released to the public. And what it seems like now is that it's possible that this whole thing was an elaborate plan.
With a screenshot in which you told him, tryouts don't scare me, Bauer. Pick a day and I am there. Here are some more after you and Trevor met up. Net worth is $51 million, to which your friend responds, you better secure that bag. Your text, need daddy to choke me out, being an absolute whore to try to get in on his $51 million.
So far, it doesn't look too good for our girl Lindsay. With all these receipts that are being put forward, she's gonna have to have a very good explanation. Otherwise,
you say this wasn't a setup. How can you expect anyone to believe that?
That's a great question. I really appreciate you having me on to even have this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot going on around this, so I really appreciate people who are asking questions about it. The first thing I want to say is, I think that Trevor did this intentionally with the text messages and how he framed this video. There's several things in it that are not correct.
So far, Lindsay said a lot of sentences, but none of it seems convincing to our interviewer. That face there looks like her BS detector has just been activated.
You know, it's so valid for people to question those text messages. But the root of the problem here is that he is presenting this as one conversation, when in reality he had thousands of messages to choose from, took those, made it look sequential, which it was not. There is no combined screenshot of those things going on one after the other.
So what Lindsay is claiming is that, yes, these messages were sent by her, but none of them were actually part of a collective conversation.
And as I said last night as well, there's no text message that ever exists, otherwise he would have, you know, put it out there, combining, you know, anything about a setup through rough sex, finances, all in one. Those were handpicked, and they were from multiple different conversations, all before we met up. And I think that the video in general doesn't even talk about what actually happened between us two, which is what would have come out during a jury trial. You know, these were all messages that happened before. And then, of course, the video is so valid as well for people to ask questions about.
So you may notice that Lindsay keeps using this term valid. This is a very valid point, a valid question. Whenever she uses this, what she's trying to say is, yes, I acknowledge that you have some doubts, that you might have some questions. Short meaning, you got evidence to support, I got no evidence to go against, but I am right, you are wrong.
But I do think that that video was entirely misleading. He also references the restraining order hearing, which people also have questions about. He says that he was cleared of any wrongdoing, which is actually incorrect. In our civil case, the judge had actually ruled that he had not been cleared of any wrongdoing, and that was a federal court judge.
So you notice how all this time the interviewer has remained completely silent, allowing Lindsay to talk without interruption. This is the first rule according to Napoleon, yo.
Never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake.
You're saying that it's misleading because you're admitting that you did talk about rough sex and wanting rough sex. You did talk about him needing to check you out. You did talk about stealing his money, but it's misleading because he put them together in the same video as if you had said it in the same conversation, when in fact it was separate conversations, correct? That's why it's misleading?
Correct, and as well as not showing, you know, the messages that occurred after where it discusses it strictly in the term of, you know, being a baseball wife.
So at this point, Lindsay admits that she gave consent to engage in S&M intimate relations. And she admits that those text messages were actually sent. But still, Alex, the interviewer, is not convinced that she is telling the truth, and she's about to press on even harder.
I'm just curious if you know, like, the statistical likelihood of you texting your friend premeditated texts saying you wanted him to check you out and steal his money, take his money, and him actually checking you out, and those two things not being related.
It's a really, really valid question. And like I said, I think you would need to look through each conversation. Those were handpicked. But I can, like I said last night, completely own the fact that those were overly sarcastic, overly inappropriate to some may seem.
So at this point, she's saying that, yes, I sent those text messages, but I was just joking. I was just being sarcastic with my friends. It didn't mean anything at all.
You serious?
Alex is looking like with her arms crossed and her head tilted. I don't think she buys any of that at all, yo.
But why did you make the drive back to LA to meet back up with him a second time if this man had just assaulted you by your own account?
I think that's a really good question. How I phrased it and how I in the past is that I was so embarrassed by the first encounter that I felt something, you know, deep in me to go and take the power back and to be better and to be what he wanted in a sense. And so I don't know. There's been a lot of, you know, through all the processes, witness experts on the psychology of what happens when you are assaulted, XYZ, but there was something in me that felt like I needed to make it better in a sense.
Weird.
But you texted Trevor before you met him, telling him you liked rough. Then you texted him after your first sexual encounter with him, which you now call an assault. And according to court records, you told him after that sexual encounter that you had, quote, never been more turned on in your life. That's not really something that someone says when they were just assaulted.
The interviewer pretty much has her cornered. She's pointing out the fact that you called it an assault the first time, but then you go back for more the second time. The logic for most people might seem a little bit怪的.
Weird.
And the only defense, if you can call it that, you have a valid point. She seems a lot worse than Amber Heard, yo, because at least Amber Heard had her own kind of defense, right?
My dog stepped on a bee.
So you mentioned the markings on your body. I want to play a portion of his video in which he plays a, I would say, interesting video of you in his bed.
And during those legal proceedings, critical information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team. Information like this video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021. Without my knowledge or consent, of course.
So when it comes to this video, this is what we call discovery. That's where two legal teams have to come together and say, hey, show me what you got, and I'll show you what I got, and we have a look and decide how we want to prepare our defense. This video was withheld from Trevor's legal team. So when this video came out, the questions started to pop up in people's minds. Is this guy Johnny Depp 2.0? Is she Amber Heard 2.0?
It's a really, really valid question.
Lindsay, I think there are a lot of sexual assault survivors who would say you don't look traumatized there and you don't look beaten, and this is allegedly after you say that he brutally attacked you and you had bruises all over your body, you had bruises all over your face. I don't see any bruises there, and I certainly don't see a woman who's just been traumatized by something horrible.
Again, super valid. I think that I woke up that morning, and the best way to explain that video is I hadn't seen my entire body yet.
So her only explanation is that she hadn't seen her entire body yet. She had no idea what her body looked like after the encounter happened.
My dog stepped on a bee.
Me, if someone took me out or if they beat me on my face, I may not be able to see my face, but I'd certainly be able to feel whether or not maybe she's got a high pain tolerance. So after all this twisting and turning on Lindsay's part, the interviewer Sokola, and she shuts the interview down with some of the most epic lines ever.
You know, Lindsay, I don't like it when men are accused, falsely accused of doing things, and they have their livelihoods taken from them, and it's done by someone who is, you know, speaking out of both sides of their mouth saying, well, I wish that this had gone to court because if it did, boy, let me tell you all the evidence that you could be seeing, but now you can't. And also then settled the case. I don't find that to be credible. I want you to learn your lesson on pursuing public figures, and I would ask that you stop sliding into my friend Alex Stein's DMs.
The interviewer revealed that she actually has a co-worker, and that Lindsay, even throughout this whole 2 years of all these allegations and all this court madness, that she's still trying to do the same thing of meeting famous, powerful people and trying to get something from them. So, out of all this, what we can learn from this is, 如果要约炮，律师套套准备好。
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe!